Mondays, and I am here with the lovely Stevie Rosalie. Welcome, beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Kathy. It's so good to be here.
Such a pleasure to have you. It's been such a while.
It has been.
So, Stevie, you are a hairstylist, as we can see in your lovely mane there, a makeup artist,
Yes, ma'am.
and we can see in your lovely face. But I always tell this story about the first time I met you. You weren't there to make me lovely. You were there to make me look horrific.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It was worth it
Yeah,
though.
you did a fabulous job. You were. I'm gonna let you tell what you were doing to my face.
I was hired as a key makeup artist and hairstylist for a feature film called Runners. It was a really great story where Kathy was a single mother who unfortunately ran into a drug addiction problem. And so it was our job to make her look like she had been through the ringer.
And that you did. My teeth were brown. I mean, black eyes. I just looked like I had a hard life, and you did a great job of doing that, portraying that. I mean, and that's probably been as about 5, 6
6 years, I think.
Yeah, and
six
those
years.
when those pictures come in up in memory, I always remember that because you know what, it was a great storyline, and I really the cast, the crew, everything was wonderful.
It was an excellent team.
Yes, but besides from that, we know that you are a hairstylist, makeup artist, and you have your own genre.
Yes, ma'am.
Give us a little bio on that.
So I about 10 years ago started specializing in vintage styling. So anything from the 1800s or earlier up until about the 70s are my favorites. I do have a special love for the 40s and 50s. Those would be my favorite.
Sorry. That's okay.
I do hairstyling for Era Correct. So if you want the 40s, you're going to get full victory rolls. 50s Page Boys, yeah. Hollywood waves, cat eyes, red lips, the works. I have an affinity for historical styling.
Yeah. And what inspired that, Stevie? How'd you get started in that?
I have always had a love for vintage era. My parents, my whole family is old school. They raised me on The Wizard of Oz, Jean Harlow, Marilyn Monroe. Yeah. That was what I was raised on. And so as I grew older, I always loved these things. My mom was a big antique collector. So as I got older, I was collecting antiques, but I would never wear them. I had all these vintage hats, these vintage gloves, but I would never wear them. I just loved how beautiful they were. And then when I met my husband, he was also into vintage, but more the car end of it. And so he brought me to my first classic car show, and I saw these women that were dressed like pinups.
Just beautiful.
Wearing that stuff that I had at home that I was never brave enough to wear out. And from that day on, I went home, I studied it, I watched all the movies, I went full blown into my obsession with vintage styling.
That's lovely. You know, growing up, my grandmother had this, we called it the top drawer with the jewelry in it. Yes. And she had all of this vintage jewelry that the girls would play in. And when she passed, I got a lot of it and her vintage hats. I haven't really dared to wear the hats much. I mean, I haven't felt like I had the wardrobe to wear it, but I did do a couple of vintage shoots, and I just love the vintage look.
Me too. It's timeless. It's always beautiful. It's really a detail oriented, and I love that attention to detail, making sure that every little bit has something that's worth looking at, and I love that.
And that's one thing. Looking at your look today, you're full vintage gear here today, and you can't have the wardrobe and not the hair and the makeup to go along with it, or vice versa. I mean, you can have the hair and the makeup and wear jeans and a t-shirt, but you need the whole gear, the whole good get up here.
That's the way I feel, at least. Not everyone might feel that way, but I certainly do. I like to have the whole look. I like to really kind of give people a time warp, other than my tattoos, to be pretty much spot on with looking like I walked out of a different era.
So when Stevie isn't in vintage, what is she wearing?
I do yoga, so I am primarily in yoga clothes. If I'm not working or going out, or if I'm just spending the day with my son, I'm primarily in yoga pants and a t-shirt. I'm pretty
Oh,
normal. I can blend in.
you can
I can
blend in
blend
well.
in pretty easily. No one would even know it was me.
Oh my goodness. You know what? I always admire seeing your photos and things on on social media. So I wouldn't see you blending in. And I've seen a lot of your work. As a stylist and a makeup artist that specializes in vintage, do you think that does that set you apart in any way that you do you think?
I hope so. I do. I do think in the Arizona market, yes, in the scheme of things, there's not too many other stylists that specialize in vintage. Um, but in the bigger picture of things across the country, there's a big rebirth in
Oh,
the vintage styling right now. It's really coming back into fashion and focus and being on trend. Brides, fashion magazines,
hmm,
TV shows. Everybody wants to be in a different era, and so
right.
it is becoming significantly more popular than it has in the past. So
Right. So does this give you a lot more work, say in the filmmaking industry or in the fashion industry?
yes and no. In some degrees, if somebody knows if they want a vintage look, primarily they'll reach out to me and come to me. But it also can pigeonhole you on
Uh,
occasions where people think that's all that you
they think that that's all you
do.
do.
Yeah, but I love it, and I'm really thankful to be able to do what I love every day.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So with Stevie Rosalie, where would you like to see your brand, say in 5 years or advancing from here where you are?
Well, I'm in the process of moving cross country. I am moving right on the border of New York City to New Jersey. So my goal is to apply to the union and see my work in big fashion magazines, TV, working with brand names, TV shows, movie, anything that's right now, because there is such a hot revival of
Mm-hmm.
of the vintage styling. I'd really like to see my work on TV and
Right,
big
right.
Vogue fashion magazines, stuff like that. That's my
Right.
goal.
I don't know if you I've been into watching some of the movies like The Godfather.
Mm.
I mean, and the ladies, they are so fabulous with their
Yeah,
vintage look and it's like I just love that look. And I could see your work in some of that in those styles of movies. So it seems like that is one of the goals you're moving towards.
absolutely. Yes, that's a big part of our move cross country, is so that I can try to further break into that industry.
Okay. Okay. So, as far as magazines, have you thought about creating your own vintage magazine?
I haven't, but that does give me something to think about. There is some great vintage style magazines out there already that I have had my work in, and I'm so thankful to have been featured in. And now I'm definitely going to have to think about that.
Yes, yes. I mean, why not? I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't know what your style is or what niche you would be going towards, a age range or a certain look. Is there a certain are there differences in vintage looks?
There is. So I prefer more authentic, true vintage looks. There's people that, once you really get into the scene, have completely different vibes throughout it. So there's women that are a little bit more rockabilly, so it's a little bit
Hmm.
more of a modern twist on it. Um, the hair is a little bit more playful. It gives you
Hmm.
more room for interpretation.
Oh,
And
okay.
then there's psychobilly, which is really big hair and
Oh.
a little bit punk rock
So
and mixed with
so you
it.
have a choice. I
Yeah.
mean, to decide, hey, if there's plenty of rockabilly magazines, you could go with whatever your favorite is.
Yeah, something a little bit more authentic, true
Yes,
vintage styling,
yes,
definitely.
styling that you may see in weddings or I mean in the movies and different things like that's going to really expand your brand. That's
Absolutely.
an awesome idea. I love that. So, Stevie, I'm just coming up with these ideas that I can see you doing. I mean, we're talking about you pretty much in Arizona. There's not many that do what you do. Have you thought about teaching also?
I do teach one-on-one classes occasionally, and I teach locally at a burlesque school. So Burlesque and vintage kind of go hand in hand. So I go there and I teach the girls stage hair and makeup and how to look proper for stage, because what you're doing on stage with all the lighting and whatever is going to be different than what you're doing for day-to-day makeup.
So we were talking about training, teaching, and teaching them the differences on how the makeup and hair is done on film, on screen versus day-to-day living. Can you tell us a little bit what you describe as the differences there?
For day-to-day makeup, you're going to want to be more natural. You don't want to have quite so much makeup. You still want to just enhance your features, still wear the makeup, but when you're on stage, you have a lot of lighting that can easily blow you out.
Right.
And especially, you know, you want the people in the front row to be able to see, the people in the back row to be able to see, and you want all your features to be present. So heavier eyebrows, heavier blush, heavier lipstick, heavier foundation. If you've ever seen a drag queen up close, that's what I always say is it's a little bit more dramatic. It's more is more.
Right. And I've pretty much seen with the vintage look, it's pretty much I'm gonna say fair skinned women that use it, and the the face is really bright, and then you have the red lipstick. Okay, so what would you suggest? There's a lot of women that go, "Oh, I'm afraid of a red lip." So, what would you substitute, or how would you comfort that?
As someone who loves red lips, I will say that I firmly believe that there is a red lip for everybody, and there is a red lip to flatter every skin tone out there. My personal favorite red lip is the Fenty. It's a lip stunner shade, and it's their universal red, and I have put it on the deepest of skin tones to the lightest of skin tones, and it is beautiful on everybody.
That's by Fenty?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. It's magnificent.
And red. MAC has a pretty red. Ruby?
Ruby Woo is great. Ruby Woo is great. Besame Cosmetics is a makeup brand that specializes in vintage era makeup, and they have a different red from each decade, and their reds are also magnificent.
And you know what? I think from past times, red has just got a bad rap. Is what it is. They think only certain people wear red.
Yeah, that is true.
So that's the thing. Red. Those darn men have given red a bad rap. No. But yeah, I love red. Or people think red is only during the festive times of the year. I mean, that's the best time to go find your reds because that's when they're out. But red can be worn year round.
Red is a neutral for me. I am always in a red lip. There is very few times that I deviate away from a bright red. I think it looks good.
I do.
Always.
I agree with you. So, other than red, what are some of the other colors that a vintage that you would put on someone?
Soft pinks, peaches, corals.
Okay.
Deep. If you're going for a more 20s look, definitely a deep violet. Eggplant almost color. Those look really beautiful. It depends on the area you're going for, really.
Okay, so that makes a difference right there.
Yeah, definitely. Decade and overall styling definitely does make a difference.
Okay. And I know you brought us a media, but I just wanted to ask this question. So we were speaking about reds and having a bad rap, but I also believe that some of the different, like the rockabilly, the pin-up style, a lot of those styles have gotten a bad rap also over the past years. Also, they're set for, hey, these are the I'm trying to think of how am I trying to word this, but they've been given a bad rap. It was just like, oh, those are the bikers, or not the bikers, the lowrider chicks, or they're this.
I mean, Hussies.
Yes, they were given a bad rap, but it's not that the attire is there's something wrong with the attire. I mean, it may have been the person you knew, but I just feel that a lot of those different looks have been given a bad rap over the years.
I think everything is subjective on person. I mean, there's going to be a bad apple in any bunch.
Sure.
And there's going to be great people in every bunch.
That's true.
So that's the way I look at it. I mean, if you're looking at, I know some people, red lips are scandalous.
Yeah.
Maybe I am scandalous, you know. that doesn't make anybody a bad person. It's how they
Right.
treat people, and it's what's in their heart. And that's the way I look at
That's
it.
very true. I agree with you. So let's take a look at some of your media, and you can
Yes.
tell us what we're looking at.
Okay, so this is my beautiful, beautiful friend in New York City, Susie. She's an incredible model. I made this hairpiece for her for there is a designer based out of New York, and she makes clothing and sewing patterns and teaches
Oh,
people how to sew.
okay.
And so I also make vintage inspired hair pieces. And so for Susie, I made this jumbo braided headband. And she just looks stunning. And
She
she's
does.
a magical model and burlesque dancer and just overall human. She's
Wonderful.
an absolute angel. That's me. So this is in a mid-century home here in Phoenix. The house is fully, it looks like you stepped into a time warp. There is not an inch of this house that isn't perfectly 50s. The photographer specializes in pinup stuff. So we decided we were just going to have fun with such a great location. And my dress is from the 50s. So we just decided to go full 50s with the whole look.
Pretty.
Thank you. And then this is my beautiful friend Sarah. So for her, we were trying to do a little bit of a Billie Holiday inspired look, and we gave her some finger waves, and she's wearing a dress that's from the 60s and some jewelry that's from the 50s and 60s. I styled her, did her hair and makeup, and we were just having fun. We wanted to make some noir style images.
I love that. That was very nice. I love those looks. And you know what I loved seeing was the diversity in the women. The diversity in its sizes. And that is one thing that I've found, and I don't know, you may have some little hidden gems out there, is that I've had the hardest time finding clothing in for full figured women.
I've got you, girl. I have some incredible companies that make all size, inclusive size ranging.
That's awesome.
So I highly recommend Fixin' by Micheline Pitt. Her clothes are absolutely stunning, and she goes size inclusivity, which I love.
That's wonderful.
And there's quite a few actually reproduction brands that I think what I love about the pinup industry is that they really do try to make sure that there is inclusivity between people and sizing, and it's really becoming like important, and that people know that you have a size, and there's people of all bodies, and I love that the food production companies are able to cater to that.
Well, if you think about it, Marilyn Monroe was a 12 to a 14, so she wasn't a tiny person.
She was a vintage 12 to 14. Yeah. So actually, a vintage 12 to 14.
What is that, about a 6'8"?
Oh, it's about a 4.
Oh,
it's about a 4. Yeah, it's tiny. She was curvy, but she was still very tiny. So it's actually a very common misconception because sizing has changed throughout the years. So I have a few dresses. I am a big vintage hoarder, so I have clothing from all size ranges because if I find them and I love them, I just want to have them because they're beautiful to look at. And so I have some dresses that are vintage size 12, 14. I couldn't get my leg in them.
Wow.
I couldn't get my leg in them.
Is it because of the material they were using then?
Vintage material does not stretch.
Okay.
It does not stretch. So it is.
So that's a problem.
Yeah. So it's if you have a size, that's it, and you wear it and hopefully it fits. So that's the big thing with the vintage is women. Then that is why larger sized vintage now is harder to find, because women wore it until it fell apart. Because there wasn't stretch, there wasn't give in it, so people were wearing something until it absolutely fell apart.
Oh, you're gonna have a hard time.
And you don't stay small for long, so that's the stuff that they'd go through quicker.
Right. That I want to mention this really quick. You also do hair pieces.
Yes, ma'am.
So what inspired you to start that?
Vintage. It's definitely a specialty, and so to be able to get a broader range and audience, to be able to offer it to people everywhere. I've been fortunate enough to ship my hair pieces and wigs all over the country, all over the world. I've shipped to Sweden, Japan, Thailand.
And is this all hair types?
All hair types, yes, ma'am.
Oh, that's awesome.
I love so I make hair pieces in all different textures and densities, and I love being able to help women have a vintage look that doesn't take them 2 hours. Vintage hairstyling is very time consuming.
And not putting a lot of damage on your own natural hair.
Absolutely.
Also. I love that. So where can our audience find you?
Instagram at Stevie Rosalie, and Facebook. My name is Stevie Rosalie, and my website is stevierosalie.com.
Wonderful. It was such a pleasure having you here today.
I'm so thankful to have been here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we look for more of Stevie Rosalie and whatever product line you get out there for us.
Oh, I hope so. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today here at Desertwood Days.